All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Well, now, what needed to happen several years ago has finally happened, as John Elway has agreed to concede some of his power as the president of football operations with the Denver Broncos, as the franchise will look to bring in a general manager. Elway has been calling the shots for the Broncos since 2011, and aside from Von Miller, he has missed on a lot of his first-round picks. Elway has also failed to develop a quarterback. You're talking about now we've had 4 different head coaches on the watch of John Elway, and this is a guy that could do no wrong at first, but the ability to find talent has gotten away from John Elway. I mean, you look at it when Elway came in, and this was in the midst of Tebow mania out there in the Rocky Mountains. John Elway never believed in Tim Tebow as a quarterback, and in spite of that, the Broncos were able to win the AFC West in 2011, and then they were able to upset the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round of the postseason. However, when Peyton Manning was released by the Indianapolis Colts, John Elway put on a full court press to make sure that he got Manning to Denver, and then he was his quarterback going forward. Now, with that said, Manning did reward Elway 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 Super Bowl championship, and credit to John Elway. He did a solid job in putting a quality team around Peyton Manning. He gave him great receivers to get the football to, and he also gave him a very stingy defense, one of the better defenses at the time in the NFL. But you look at it and you look at the dynamic. Elway has missed on so many of his first-round picks. You think of the likes of Paxton Lynch at quarterback. He never worked out. You also look at Shane Ray at outside linebacker. He never worked out. Garrett Bowles at offensive tackle is another person that comes to mind, and he has had his struggles with the Broncos. And it's a situation when you have those first-round picks and they don't work out, it really sets back your franchise. I've talked about the inability to develop that quarterback, as Peyton Manning was able to mask a lot of those problems. The first quarterback that he gave a chance to was Brock Osweiler when he drafted him out of Arizona State. He won a couple of games, but he also lost his fair share of games as well. And I mentioned Paxton Lynch. I'm going to talk about him again. And then, of course, the jury is still out on Drew Lock. And I will give Elway credit from the standpoint that out of all of the quarterbacks that he drafted, Drew Lock looks like he has the most potential to be something in the NFL. But, as good as John Elway was as a quarterback, he simply has never been able to find that next guy. 4 different head coaches. We talked about him firing John Fox in favor of Gary Kubiak. Vance Joseph, basically he was there for a cup of coffee. Now it's Vic Fangio's turn to try to get things done. And Vic Fangio, I don't care what anybody says, he appears to be an overwhelmed head coach, as he just appears to be another guy who is keeping the seat warm. And for Elway, this obviously wasn't just his decision. I don't care what anybody says, but it's a situation anybody else would have gotten fired. But the fact that it's John Elway and he has meant so much to this Denver Broncos franchise since 1983, of course, when they made the trade with the then Baltimore Colts to obtain his draft rights, he has meant so much to this franchise that you just can't fire him. You cannot walk away from him. It would be a PR nightmare. But with that said, in order for the Broncos to save face, it comes out and says, John Elway is conceding his power. This was a move that had to be done, because the longer that John Elway continued to call the shots as far as the personnel decisions for the Denver Broncos, the longer that it was going to hurt them. Historically, when you think of the Broncos in the NFL, you think of a team that is going to consistently compete and contend for championships. They've gotten away from that in the last 3 to 4 years, and the longer that Elway would stay in power would be the longer that it would take for them to get back to that. The Kansas City Chiefs are light years ahead of the Denver Broncos right now in the AFC West. And if you were Denver, you cannot afford to get lost in the shuffle behind the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. So I think this was a good move. They need a better better personnel guy to call the shots for them. And hopefully, for their sake, Drew Lock is their guy. Elway has tried to put some people around him at the wide receiver position with the likes of KJ Hamler. You also saw them bring in draft Jerry Jeudy this past year, the rookie out of Alabama. But they've got their work cut out for them defensively as well, trying to find those gems. Who's going to be the next Von Miller? We saw them draft Bradley Chubb a couple of years ago in the first round out of NC State, and he's had his highs and lows. He can be an impact player, but you can't be an impact player if you're consistently hurt. So these are the things that the Denver Broncos have to work on going forward. Putting a team around Drew Lock and trying to find a way to compete and keep up with the Joneses in the AFC West. This was a move that had to be done. John Elway definitely had to put some of his pride aside because it's not about him. It's about what is best for the Denver Broncos. And going forward, the best thing for the Denver Broncos is for them to have somebody else calling the shots. So whomever that will be, let's see how they can get things done and get things turned around this offseason, whether it be through free agency in the draft. And hopefully for the sake of the Broncos and their fan base, they can get a quick turnaround and get back to contending for the postseason in the AFC. So folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to thank all of the subscribers out there. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. Take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.